This is becoming a bit of a habit, doing a review of a watch that's already sold out, but it's never been about convincing you to buy or not to buy a watch. For me, it's an opportunity to talk about fascinating watches, the craft of watchmaking, in-house versus out-house, and how heavy things feel more expensive. Atelier Wen released the Inflection, a $26,000 tantalum integrated bracelet watch from a brand based in Hong Kong. I picked this watch up at the local candy store / DHL pickup point. It arrived in a cardboard box. That was weird for $26,000. Let's dive in. So the least interesting part first, the specs. The watch is 99.9% pure tantalum in its case with a mix of concave and convex surfaces. It's finished with mirror polished chamfers, vertical brushing and sandblasted accents. It's got a diameter of 40 millimeters and a 45 millimeter lug to lug. It's 10.2 millimeters thick, including the crystal. It's got a screw down crown. It's water resistant to 100 meters. Not that I would ever consider taking a watch of this price anywhere near water, but you can. It's got a hand-hammered 95 silver dial base, grand fur fume enamel dial ranging from pale green to deep viridian, done by the Kongling Jun workshop in Beijing. It has Western Arabic numeral hour markers by Li Yuan Rapati, inspired by Chinese bamboo leaf calligraphy. The leaf hands are rhodium plated. They are mirror polished with concave side planes. The minutes and seconds hands are hand bent. The movement is a customized Girard-Perregaux GP03300, but it's got a Chinese wind motif. It's got skeletonized bridges with anglage, exterior angles, and radial wavy Côte de Genève. It's got a dark gray ruthenium plating. It's automatic winding, 28,800 BPH, 48 hours of power reserve, and it's adjusted to 5 positions. The bracelet has curved external and middle links with strong vertical brushing on the external links and mirror polishing on the middle links. It's 22 millimeters wide at the case, 18 at the clasp. It's got an on-the-fly micro adjustment system which is adjustable to 4 positions, and it's also got a quick release system. It also, like I said, costs 26,000 euros. I know that half of the people watching this video are not subscribed to my channel. If you have been here before or this is your first time and you're enjoying my channel, please click the subscribe button. I'm really trying to hit 200,000 subscribers. And if you do feel my content is worthy of your subscription, then please click the button below. It means a ton. Thanks. The watch I loaned is a prototype, so I don't think the packaging is reflective of what you would get on a retail version. The first thing you notice is the weight of this watch. It's very close to the weight of a Rolex Date-8 in full gold. Your brain really has to get used to that weight because it has a hard time computing that something this size is so dense. My wife briefly had it on her wrist and she was clear she would need to go to the gym more often if she was going to wear this watch. You also really need to size it properly and probably a little bit on the tight side because it's a little bit on the top heavy side. The next thing you notice is this gray, almost black color to the metal. It's much darker than titanium and it's also smoother than any titanium watch I've ever handled. For something so heavy and so incredibly dense, I also don't think of smoothness and softness, but the case and bracelet are smooth and soft. I've never handled tantalum before, so I don't know if this is an inherent characteristic of tantalum or down to how they've polished the case, but it's a noticeable and pleasant, creamy, smooth feel. Compared to the perception, this watch has more flowing lines. The case itself is designed with inspiration from classic Chinese homes. And I'm not going to show you a picture of that because the last time I Googled a picture of a Chinese home, Google gave me a picture of a Korean castle. So to avoid any mistakes and inadvertent cultural misunderstandings, you're just going to have to take my word and Atelier Wen's word for it that this is inspired by Chinese homes. The first thing about the case I noticed was this expanding bezel on the flanks that flows straight onto the bracelet. It's, to my eye, seamless. There's no overlap, no gap, no misalignment at all. The polish is prominent on the bezel and those flanks, but because of the deep, dark nature of the material, this watch whispers compared to a Date-8 that, screams, "Look at me." The bracelet is phenomenal. If you look closely, you can see that especially the center links have some commonalities with the Nautilus. They're more angular though. The center links are raised above the rest of the bracelet. I think of them a little bit as, sort of slow speed bumps. The transitions from link to link are seamless, and I can't find a spot where it isn't on par with an AP Royal Oak bracelet. The clasp is excellent. It's not, to my knowledge, the Brogioli bracelet that you find on the Lange Odysseus, but it's very similar. You can push the logo and then you can adjust back and forth. The Wen logo is milled, engraved, and has a grained texture to the recessed parts. The dial is a step up for me compared to the Ancestra that I had in for review a while back. It's the same hand-hammered silver dial with a green sand grand feu enamel application. There's tonality and gradation and a ton of texture, and most importantly for me, Western Arabic numerals. That was my main downside for the Ancestra. Chinese numerals are fine and all, but as a Westerner, I've always had Western Arabic or Roman numerals for variation. At the core, it's a really simple dial. There's not a lot of superfluous detail, but what there is really stunning to look at. The movement is also quite good looking. Compared to the base Girard-Perregaux, this movement has been through a lot of aesthetic modifications. It's got a custom rotor, it's got multiple different finishings. The bridges have this wavy Côte de Genève finish to them that's done really well. There's a little bit of perlage visible here and there on the base plate. The custom rotor pops, it also has this wavy, windy style to it that I quite like. Here and there on the bridges, there's also a decent amount of bevels and anglage, as you know, the experts call it. There's so much about this watch that's worth talking about. My first thought is weight. I remember 20 years ago, the first time I was introduced to the concept of perceived quality. It was this idea that some things communicate quality more than others. And the classic example at the time was the sound of a Mercedes car door. It was a door that had a thunk to it that just sounded more like quality than some tinny metallic door. A white gold day date weighs more than a Datejust, so it feels more premium. It isn't really, but the brain just goes there. So do I assume that this watch is better just because it's heavy? The reality is I probably do. And that's where I have to force myself to consider the reality of machining tantalum. Because put simply, tantalum is a biatch to machine compared to the simplicity of steel. It's slower, it wears out tools more, damage happens much easier. So you have to use specialized tools. You have to go really, really slow because of the heat, and you need to lubricate a lot. And on top of that, the material in and of itself is expensive to start with. It's a lot more expensive than steel. Then there's the dial, silver dial, hand hammered. According to Atelier Wen, it takes 20 days to make a dial with a 50% failure rate. Now, a curious commenter in the Ancestra video asked, how can that be? And honestly, I don't know how it gets to 20 days. It does seem high, but there's no doubt that the dial, and the hands for that matter, take more time than some machine-pressed and stamped affair. Some dude is sitting over that one dial with a teeny tiny hammer and banging out those indentations. Grand feu enamel is also a pain to work with. And on these dials, it's going to be complicated by the fact that you're applying it to a textured surface. Getting the thickness right and keeping it consistent across the dial is not something you just bang out in huge numbers. The hands are crisp, and can I tell that they're hand bent? No, but I take Wen's word for it. Now, to the controversial statement, and there has to be one, because you can probably tell so far that I'm really quite impressed with this watch. The movement, which is a modified Girard-Perregaux, is the weakest part of the watch, and I'm not saying it's bad. It's just that the other stuff impresses me more. This movement is the one you'll find in the Laureato and a lot of other base GP models. Its starting point is not a high horology movement with a wealth of complications, human-done anglage, hand engraving, black polished screws. It's got good, safe Côte de Genève, some hide-the-mistakes pelage, and a big old rotor that gets the job done. Atelier Wen have sourced a movement that goes into a watch that costs the same in a Swiss brand. The modifications they have done are really good. The two most noticeable differences are the wavy Côte de Genève on the bridges. That striping is laser engraved. Compared to standard machine Côte de Genève, you just see a cleaner and more consistent result. Côte de Genève isn't the hardest technique in the world, but the way they've gone about it leads to a really, really strong result. The custom rotor is also an incredibly good looking one, and something that's important to me is that it's thematically consistent to the rest of the watch. The wavy stuff on the movement signals Asia, just like the calligraphy on the dial numerals indicates the same as well. It's consistent, it's coherent, it's complete. And as for the anglage, I'm not skilled enough to tell if the anglage is hand done or machined. I know what I'm supposed to look for, but I just don't quite have the eye for it. But needless to say, hand done costs more to do, but machined is still a step that adds detail and cost regardless. This is the second time I've reviewed an Atelier Wen watch. I do so because I'm fascinated by their designs, and also because they're not quite Chinese, not quite Asian, not quite European, and not quite Swiss. But they very clearly show what's going on in the watch world. And I harp on this on occasion because I think it's important. There are these standard tropes that kind of bounce around the internet when it comes to Swiss and not Swiss. The big one is China or Asia can do anything the West can do. The technical process of machining something as complex as tantalum is something that's, let's say, a non-Swiss brand has technological access to do. There's nothing on the bracelet, for example, where I can find any Swiss brand at the same price that does it better. Nothing. A hand-hammered Granfu enamel dial can be done by a master craftsman in China and doesn't have to be an employee of Jaeger-LeCoultre. The artistic flair and design cred that they put into this watch is not dependent on where you were born or where you live. But where did they get the movement? Swiss brand. They went all out on this watch, and when they needed a good movement, they called the Swiss. In the Ming 2001, which costs an eye-watering 37,500 Swiss francs, the movement is made in collaboration with Agenor, a historically significant Swiss company. I had this realization, one of those kind of pin-dropping moments a while ago. To the Swiss, watchmaking is first and foremost about the movement. When Breitling booked 3 YouTubers to visit their manufacture, 90% of the video was dedicated to the process around movement manufacture. And I know you're thinking, like, duh, how did you not know this? But for me, this is a case of seeing things in a different light. Why are bracelets for some brands bought from a factory in Thailand? Because it's the movement. For watchmakers, it's the movement that's at the core. That's also where the intellectual property is. Apart from a few very niche Chinese watchmakers like Famalhut, all global innovation in movements originates from Switzerland. Siloxy escapements from Rolex, Switzerland. A magnetic escapement from Breguet, Switzerland. That's why in those Swiss-made rules it states the movement has to be developed, cased and tested in Switzerland. The carve-out of the 40% was for cases and bracelets and jewels and other subordinate components. It's the movements that are protected. On this watch, I'm a sucker for the weight. I'm a total sucker for the darkness of the metal, its softness. Everything about this watch is incredibly well thought through, and taking into consideration the material, the machining complexity, the artistry of the dial and the modifications to the movement, I find myself thinking 26,000 is ballpark reasonable. As for alternatives, there are a ton of options. You could go for an IWC Ingenieur in steel, a lot cheaper, but at least worth considering. Then you can go for a Chapek Antarctique Passage de Drake, which goes for 26,000 euros in steel. Or a Parmigiani Tonda, costs about the same. Maybe a Trilobe 32 that sells for 21-ish thousand euros. The Ingenieur, I think, is a fabulous watch, but it's not what I'd call a high horology watch. The movement is great, it's got 120 hours of power reserve, but it's not the key selling point. This is a steel watch, so there's no precious metal premium, and it doesn't have the kind of complexity to it that a tantalum watch brings to the table. So that leaves me with options like the Chapek, the Parmigiani, and the Trilobe. If the case and dial were my main criteria for choosing, I would go Wen, Chapek, Trilobe, Parmigiani. The Parmigiani to me feels just a little bit too restrained. But then you turn the watch over and you ask yourself, if I'm buying the movement, what's the order then? Then the Wen is rock bottom. The Chapek is a million miles more beautiful, more detailed, more impressive. It's head and shoulders ahead of the others. The Tonda is also incredibly good looking. It doesn't hold a candle to the Chapek, but it's still great. And then Trilobe have just a super interesting in-house caliber. And finally, the Wen is a workhorse Girard-Perregaux with custom finishing. Excellent custom finishing, but it's just not in the same league. So it very much comes down to what kind of a watch buyer you are. For a lot of us, it's the external aesthetics, the outside appearance. And that's the thing you see every day. For me, Atelier Wen have something that is a technical achievement that also looks really, really good on the wrist. There, I pick this watch every day of the week over the rest. But personally, I find myself more and more at this kind of price point, turning the watch over and looking at the ticking heart. And now don't get me wrong, this watch, over a Laureato with the same movement, I'm getting this one. But over the intricacy and detail of a Chapek movement, that's the choice. I suppose if we were all made of money and I was completely made of money, I would buy both. Like, that's ever going to happen. It's not. So that's where we are. Do you buy the front or the back? That's all I had. Like, subscribe. Cheers.